Morning, everybody. Shabbat Shalom, a good Sabbath to all. This is the Sabbath of Parshat Tetzaveh, the 20th week of the Torah cycle. We have begun a lot of things. We've just passed through the portal of Purim, the wake-up call every year for our next pilgrimage season, at the time when we're getting ready to go up to Jerusalem. We may not be able to physically go again this year because of the restrictions on travel, but nevertheless, our spirits are going to be brought up to Jerusalem. And this pilgrimage season, we have 29 sunsets before we're supposed to be there, be in that process, be ready to step into the realm of Passover, and then into unleavened bread, the 7 days of unleavened bread. And then all at the same time overlapping into the days of counting all the way up to Shavuot, counting the Omer as it's often called, Sephirot HaOmer. And this whole harvest season that we're entering into, there's a countdown going on. If you look around in the northern hemisphere where we are here in the Texas realm of USA, I notice that there's life coming up from the earth. The jonquils, the daffodils are beginning to shoot their life stems up from the ground. We will soon be seeing fruitfulness take place. We will soon be seeing fruit trees budding. We will be seeing the grains begin to come forth, the grain harvest begin to come forth. This is the way that creation works. Every year we repeat this cycle of harvest season, and then we get into this midsummer days whenever the other types of harvest take place, the harvest of the trees. And that goes all the way through the harvest of the vines and into the fall. And so we have this new growth season that is upon us. We should be feeling that because we ourselves are earth. We were formed. Our lives consist of both being formed of the earth and being in contact with this earth. And so we should be feeling this urge to produce, to be fruitful, to provide sustenance to the ecosystem, to cooperate with one another, to hopefully, and cooperate also, most of all, with our King, to bring forth fruitfulness in the world, in the land. So here we are at this particular special week, the week of Tetzaveh. It is the 15th day of Adar, according to the Hebrew calendar. That means that yesterday it was Purim. I'll leave that to you to discuss among yourselves as to how you dealt with that process. But what that basically means is the wake-up call has been given. We are now at Exodus. In our Parshat studies, we're now at Exodus 27, verse 20. We'll go all the way through chapter 30, verse 10. The Parsha is known as Tetsave. And this is the Parsha, our friends, that focuses our attention on one of the three callings, particularly on one of the three of the Sinaitic promises or callings that the Holy One placed upon our life. If you remember, hopefully you will, in Exodus 19 in Parshat Yitro, before the great theophany, the Holy One told us what he was going to do with us. He gave us our mission statement for the rest of our lives and for the rest of creation, rest of time. And that was a threefold element of purpose, of mission. And the first of that was we were to become his Segillah, his special treasure, cherished treasure people from among all the nations. We are going to be set apart, made distinct. We'll look different. We'll smell different. We'll act different. We'll talk different. We'll interact with the world different. We'll react to things of the world differently. We are his Segillah. That's calling number one. And we have been addressing that, and that's a lot of that was contained in the Mishpatim discourse, Parsha Mishpatim, 2 weeks ago. That tells us how to distinguish us from the rest of the world, how to look different in practical ways as we renew our mind and let our mind begin to focus on what his people are supposed to look like and how they are supposed to handle some of the most difficult situations in life. Well, that was the Am Segillah calling. The second calling that was given to us at Mount Sinai before the great theophany, the great general outline of who we are to be and what we're to do, was that we were to become his Mamlachet Kohanim. In English, most translations tend to translate that as kingdom of priests. That's a calling that is beyond, above and beyond the calling of the Am Segillah. The Am Segelah, we are to separate, be different, be markedly, noticeably, observably different in all of the aspects of life from the rest of the nations, the rest of the people. Sort of a city set on a hill, so to speak. But in the second phase, the second function that the Holy One has assigned to us, the covenant function, it is to become a kingdom, and I'll use the term priest, even though I will hope before this day's over you will realize that's a very inaccurate and misleading, sometimes descriptive, especially as we tend to make that part of our theologies. Priest is not really the right word, but that's what's in your Bibles, your English Bibles as they're translated, and so we'll use it for the time being. Kohan, we're going to learn about a verb in Hebrew. All the nouns that are mentioned from Hebrew, come out of the Hebrew, are from verbs. They are derived from verbs. And the verb that we translate as priest is kahan. Well, kohen is the noun, and the verb is kahan. And we're going to learn what kahaning means. And so we're going to be a special people that does special things. And the special things we do are kahaning and kadashing and avodah. There are three basic things that are going to be mentioned and discussed today in Parshat Tetzaveh, or this week in Parshat Tetzaveh. So you'll have three protocols under this kingdom of priests aspect. First one is to learn how to kahan. The second one, and I'm using these in no particular order, the second one is to learn how to do his avodah, his service, his ministry, from a heart of love, from a heart of inspiration and passion, not from a sense of duty or fear of retribution or seeking of reward, just because who he is. And in response to who he is, we do what we do out of avodah. So we have kahaning, we have avodah, and we also have kadashing, setting apart, sanctifying. Kadash is usually mean to consecrate in English is translated, or to make holy. This is the idea. We're part of our kingdom of priest function is to do all these three things: kahan, avodah, and this kadashing. And then the third thing that he told us he would do, make of us, is a goy kadosh, a holy nation. Now you see where this holiness, this kadashing factor comes in. Because once we get to the stage where we're actually kadashing ourselves and kadashing, making holy, consecrating ourselves, then we become a nation where this spreads from person to person. And it becomes a polar force in the world. When we begin to be a holy nation, then we draw people to us. It's like the poles, the north and the south poles in the planet we call Earth. Each one has a polarization factor and a magnetic force that draws things to it. And so now we have the Kadashing. We're supposed to be a holy nation, a Kadash that has the energy of Kedusha in it. And this is supposed to draw people to us. It will also, of course, repel certain other people who are charged a little differently. But this is to be an energy about us, this holy nation part. We'll get to that in later periods, later seasons of our work. But right now, this week, our focus is on the second of the mission statements that the Holy One gave us at Sinai. We are to be a kingdom of priests. Gird up your loins. Roll up your sleeves. This is hands-on work. This is not theory. This is not stuff you do in an ivory tower. This is not stuff you do in a study hall. This is not stuff you do in the playground of your mind. To be a kingdom of priests means you're hands-on, boots on the ground, means you're actively engaged. You're getting your hands dirty. You're getting your soul a bit sullied by the interaction with the world, but you're responding to this kadashing drive, this holiness force, and you are bringing people with you, carrying them along with you in this process. So I call Parsha Tetsave, which focuses on this particular aspect of the calling. Who are those men walking around in the tabernacle? And what do they think they are doing there? Who are those men walking around in our tabernacle? And what on earth do they think they are doing there? That's our basic message. If you would, we're in this stage of renewing our mind. The Holy One can imagine what he has to deal with, with a fallen humanity. I know we think we're all so smart. We think we're all so cool. We think we're all so moral. We think we're all so good. We think we can get everything we need off of the internet or off of YouTube or off of... We think we can get all this stuff out of Google or wherever. But he knows the reality of the matter. He knows that we are nowhere close to where he created us. We are not utilizing the facilities of knowledge, of wisdom, of understanding. Much less are we being fruitful at the level at which he created us to be. So his task, his monumental task, is to deal with our brokenness, to deal with our fallenness, to deal with our dysfunction. I just insulted you all and myself in the process. We are dysfunctional. In the kingdom realm, from the standpoint of what we were designed to be, we are all dysfunctional. You are, I am, everyone you know is. Now get over that revulsion index and that sense of insult, because this is what he's trying to deal with. He wants to get us to the place where we become at least partially functional. Partially valuable to the world, partially assets to this world, as opposed to being more trouble, more problems, more issue, more darkness being introduced by our lives. So he has this monumental task. How does a spiritual, divine creature, perfect in all of his ways, wise beyond our even ability to comprehend, how does he interact with and raise us up to a standard where we can at least begin to function fruitfully the way he intended for us to do so, as opposed to behaving like a bunch of spoiled children who get upset over everything they see, every little insult that comes their way, everything doesn't go the way they want it to, everything that stirs or flares up their emotions, everything. How does he get us? Look, if you were, we're not, and I'm not, but if we pretend for a second, or try to imagine what it would be like to be the creator of the universe, and to look down on you, and look down on your life, and look down on your family, look down on our cultures, look down on our nations, and say, somehow or other, my task, his task, is to bring us up to a higher level. To bring us up to a level where we're actually a positive influence in the world. Where we actually are hands-on, boots on the ground, actively engaged in bringing his kingdom to the earth. Where we're actually working alongside of him in his yoke, along with Yeshua, in bringing about redemption for the species of mankind. Bloodline by bloodline, household by household. And of bringing about redemption and restoration in every square inch, every hillside, every valley, every place on the face of the earth, every geographical location, to bring it back to its state of Edenic beauty, fruitfulness, and shalom. How does he get us there? Well, he is utilizing multiple teaching techniques. He is immersing us several times. It's like he's dosing us one way, he picks us up with the other hand and doses us another way. He's trying to get us, reprogram us, redefine us, renew us in every facet of our life. He has to renew our hearts. He has to refresh our spirits. He has to renew our minds. And so this renewing of the mind that he's working on so hard in all these different ways right now involves changing our self-image. This is, I think, most people who walk with the Holy One for a while begin to realize that their self-image that they've always had of who they are and how they define their worth, or how they define their status in society, it was totally skewed. It was so badly messed up that there was no way they were ever going to get out of it on their own. They were just going to keep going on a death spiral, getting worse and worse, getting angrier and angrier. I'll use a wounded ear and wounded ear, more wounded all the time, more offended and more resistant and withdrawing, as opposed to engaging more and more. That's what would have happened because of the flawed, fragmented self-image that we have, the sense of what's valuable, what about us is valuable or invaluable. So he has to step in and totally remake our self-image. Welcome to this part of the protocols. He wants to reconsider, make you reconsider refresh, renew your mind regarding who you think you are and why you think you are here. What purpose you are designed to serve, and how you are going to get to the place where you become actually fruitful. So this is what he's engaged in. And today I would ask this question. It's sort of a question he asks me regularly. And I always have to shake my head a little bit and say, well, I'm glad you asked me the question because I was going down the wrong road. So here's the question. I'm going to read it out loud, all of it, and then we'll discuss little bits of it at a time. The question is, as he's renewing our mind and our self-image, do we consider ourselves truth seekers, believers, sinners saved by grace, morality declarers? What's moral? What's moral? What's immoral? Theologians, guardians of truth, justice, I guess in the American way. It's not really a thing anymore. Repositories of knowledge, critics and judges for the world to listen to. Is that what we consider ourselves to be? Because that's what most of us act like. That's what most of us seem to be aspiring to be. And that's an unproductive approach. And so the self-image issue is, but if that's not who we are called to be, if we're not called to be primarily truth seekers, if we're not called primarily to be to believers, if we're not called primarily to think of ourselves as just sinners saved by grace, virtue signalers, moral preachers, theologians, guardians of truth, or repositories of knowledge bases, or critics, or judges that can tell the world what's wrong with everything. If that's not who we are, then who are we? Why are we here? What is the plan? What is our purpose? What is our self-image? Who are we supposed to have a self-image? So are we those things, truth seekers and the like? Or are we responsible subjects of a glorious kingdom? Responsible subjects of a glorious kingdom. Every kingdom must have subjects. We talk a lot about the kingdom of heaven. That was Yeshua's favorite subject. It was not how bad the Pharisees were, the Sadducees were, or the Herod was. That was not his favorite. His favorite subject was building the king and bringing the kingdom of heaven to earth. So that's his favorite subject. We talk about it a lot. But are we truly subjects of this kingdom, or is it just some pie-in-the-sky dream, some fantasy that we have, some utopia that we hope to build? Is it real? Are we subjects now? Not that we're seeing the fullness of it. Are we subjects? Do we consider ourselves primarily as subjects of an eternal, glorious kingdom? And in connection with that, before we can say yes to that, we need the second part, which is that we are selfless, tireless, inspired, and inspiring courtiers, and servants of a very real, very alive, and very present King. A Redeemer King that has this grand plan for the creation, for the redemption of mankind and the restoration of creation. Are we that, or are we just brains with judgmental attitudes and a sense of self-satisfaction that we believe the right stuff? Now, I told you Tetzaveh is when things get real, things hands-on, where we have to get activated, and the stuff that we can talk about in study halls or around tables at Starbucks doesn't matter anymore. It's what we do. It's how we engage with the world. That's the issue we're going to be dealing with in Parshat Tetzave. We are trying to yield to a great plan, and that plan is to build a great nation out of the seed of Abraham. This has been the plan. It was announced back in Genesis 12. If you ever lose sight of this plan, you'll get caught up in the theology realm. You'll get caught up in the useless realm of arguing over this and that and judging and criticizing people. If you lose sight of the fact that what we are doing is responding to a call to become a great nation, to become a part of something huge, a part of a transformational energy force upon the earth. This is somewhat stunning, somewhat overwhelming process is this is not just about me having a good relationship with God and feeling happy and being blessed and hoping I have a good family and hoping I have a good life. This is about us being part of the great nation that the Holy One promised he would make of Abraham's seed. I will make of your seed a great nation, and you will be a blessing, and you will by you people will be blessed or cursed depending on how they respond to you, and then in this process you will become a blessing and part of blessing to every household and family on the face of the earth. This is what's happening. And it's a process. It does not happen overnight. It is not a status. It is a process. This process requires us to engage with it. So it is now what I call go time. The way I get engaged, go and do. It's time to rise up. It's springtime, right? We're getting ready to see the trees grow and the fruit begin to put on it and the grains begin to come up and get ready for harvest. It is not time to sit and ponder stuff. It's time to get engaged with practical applications, practical matters of the kingdom. And so basically I'd like to say this is time to rise up and get in sync with the King and his Kedusha continuum. Kedusha continuum. Kedusha is, like I say, the energy of holiness that the Holy One and his heavenly realm projects. If we get in sync with his Kedusha, it means that we have reverse polarization. We had previously in our lives been drawn into the reverse pole, the unholiness pole, the uncleanness pole. There are basically four forces, four poles, four magnetic forces spiritually in the world. There's the holiness pole that draws you towards the kingdom. There's the unholiness pole, the common, the profane, that draws you down. We had primarily been in that realm. That's where we live. That's where most people live. This is why we need to understand that is where most people live. They are being drawn unseen, unknowing. They don't even understand that they are being drawn into a vortex of a negative pole, the pole of profanity, commonness, unholiness, ungodliness, scorn, all the things you see in Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. This is that process of they're being drawn down. If you do not know that you were once drawn down into that realm, you are still the force is still there. Maybe you felt it this week. Maybe you're feeling it right now. That force is still there, but here's the thing. There is an opposite force that's drawing you in another direction. And when we have what I call reverse polarization, when the redemption begins to take, when the seed hits good soil and begins to produce, when that takes place, there's a reverse polarization. And while the draw of the unholiness, the ungodliness, the way of the sinner, the seed of the scornful is still upon us, it is losing its impact. The primary source of energy is the holy, the kadosh, the things of the kingdom. Now, if you see that, then you understand we're always on a continuum, somewhere along a spectrum of how much of the unholiness pull is affecting us versus how much of the holiness pull, energy force, is affecting us. And he's going to show us that pattern in Parshat Tetzave as to what it looks like. And I'm going to give you the standard, this is sort of from the Psalms and wherever you'll see it portrayed. There are the levels of the spectrum. You see a rainbow, it's basically a spectrum of light. And you see certain colors that shine forth brightly, though there's an incalculable number of actually hues and frequencies that are involved in that. But you see purple and blue and green and yellow and orange and red. That's what you see. But there's so much more. Well, these are the levels of the spectrum of Kedusha, the spectrum of the continuation, Kedusha continuum. It starts with the Goyim, the nations. This is not a slap. This is not an insult. They are drawn. They don't mean to be. They wouldn't necessarily automatically choose to be, but they have they haven't had a polar shift. They haven't had a reverse polarization yet. So the only force they feel is this negative, or the primary force they feel is the negative force now. The seed of the scornful, the way of the sinner, the counsel of the ungodly. You can see how this happens. And so they're drawn. This is the lowest level. This is purple on your spectrum. We're going to go all the way up to the brilliant red at the end, but that's the other pole. So we go through. What's the second level? The second level, the blue, basically level with regard to the Kedusha continuum, is B'nai Israel. It's Israel. You say, well, I thought we were a lot further along than that. No, you're still under the same force. You're still being pulled. You just have a little bit more of the pull of the Holy One, and it's markedly. It changes your color. It changes the way you look. It changes the way your frequency in the world, because you now get more of the pull of the holiness factor of the heavenlies and God's calling upon your life than the other realm. You're getting more of it. And that's the second level. And the third level then is the Leviim, the Levites. The Levites are the next phase, the next stage. The Levites are consecrated a little bit more than B'nai Israel is. So we had the Goyim, the nations, the people. Then we had of all the different ethnicities. And then we, all equally. No, one's worse than another. They're all the same. And then we had the B'nai Israel. It's not because they're morally better. It's because they have received part of the Kedusha of God, and that energy is active in them. It's really almost, to some degree, beyond their control. And now the Leviim. The Leviim the Levites have been set aside for a specific task and work, and their focus is more turned toward the holy than it is toward the unholy. Doesn't mean they're perfect. Doesn't mean they won't fail. Doesn't mean they won't get drawn into the mess. We'll see that many times. But it does mean that as a group, as a culture, they are being drawn higher than even ordinary B'nai Israel. And then what's the next group? We got purple, we got blue, we got green. Get into yellow. What's yellow? Yellow, obviously, using that as an example. The yellow range of color or frequency in this continuum of Kedusha is the Kohanim, the priests of Aaron, the Aaronic priest. They have called to a higher level of Kedusha, a higher level of holiness. And they dedicate themselves even more than the Leviim do. And this causes, so they're still, once again, just because you're a Kohan, just because you have been called you're a son of Aaron or a descendant of Aaron, does not mean you will be perfect. It does not mean you will not make mistakes. It does not mean you will not fail. It does not mean you will not be an embarrassment from time to time to yourself and to others. Get over the putting people on pedestals and giving them titles and positions and saying they should walk in that office. Human beings are human beings, and we have both pulls, both draws on us at all times. But it's a little higher when you get to the priest, to the Kohanim. And you'll see it. Boy, they are called to a higher standard. They're called to a higher level. They're called to do things and behave in ways that the Goyim don't even understand. B'nai Israel just sort of looks at it and say, wow. The Levites say, I'm glad I'm not called to that. And that's the then we get into the orange, and that's the Kohen Gadol. That's the high priest. The high priest is way beyond the Kedusha calling of his sons, of Aaron's sons. And we're going to see how this relates, because you know who our high priest is. It's just a picture. Every picture tells a story, and the picture of Aaron pictures us into the high priest of Yeshua, HaMashiach, the Messiah, who is our high priest, and he is going to be that level of shining brightness of holiness. But even he, in his earthly realm, his earthly activities, is just a picture of the highest level itself, which is that bright red, going into the infrared, going into beyond, which is the Holy One, the King, as he sits in his throne in his ephemeral, permanent spiritual form. So we have this continuum of Kedusha. Where do you find yourself on the continuum of Kedusha? How much of the pull of the ungodly counsel, the way of the sinner, and the seed of the scornful is active in your life? I'll let that just soak into you a while, because most of us are probably feeling a little tight in some parts of our stomach right now. How much of a draw does the sin life have upon you? How much of the draw does the criticism, the sit in the high seat of the and judge everybody and tell everybody what's wrong with them? How much is that upon you? And then how much is it? How close are you to the counsel of the ungodly? Where do you go for your information? How much do you Google? Or go DuckDuckGo if you're into DuckDuckGo. I don't care which search engine you use. How much do you rely upon earthly wisdom, earthly knowledge, earthly databases? How much do you rely upon this? How much do you rely upon common sense? Look, I like common sense. I think common sense is a positive factor for humanity. It is not what we are ultimately to rely on. That is part of the draw of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So, the key is, how are we coming on this continuum? How are we doing? How are we responding to the draw of holiness from the kingdom's beauty realm? And how much are we still moved and shaken and pulled and drawn by the things of this world and its lower dimensions and its unholiness? Our primary challenge this week will be to learn and to embrace the purposes, disciplines, and delight of the avodah of the Mishkan. The avodah patterns of the Mishkan. The Holy One, I told you, has to get us from the standpoint of being totally immersed in the darkness to totally capable, at least, of walking in the light and leading others into the light as we go up this continuum from the purples, the dark purple, deep purple, into the brilliant reds and lights of shining. So getting to learn and then to embrace these protocols of avodah and preparing to host and then serve the Creator of the universe. Now, this is the other facet at which, another place, which is a radical point of departure from traditional religion, man-made religion, institutional religion. The Torah is shocking, as is the teachings of Yeshua, as are the Psalms, as are the prophets, as are all the writings. There is this shocking statement that is not talked about, shied away from in institutionalized religions. It includes Judaism and Christianity and all others. And that is this. The Creator of the universe's plan is to abide and dwell on earth in our midst, in us and in our midst. We are created to be able to host His presence, to host His holiness, to be a receptacle, a repository where He can abide and dwell. This is not, He's got His place in heaven, we got our place down on earth. Don't cross this up. That's what religion tells you. Don't cross this up. You believe in the heavenly stuff, you take care of the earthly stuff. That is not what Torah talks about. It's not what the psalmist talks about. It's not what the prophets talk about. It's not what Yeshua talked about. It's not what Paul talked about. It's not what the Revelator talked about. What the Bible talks about from stem to stern is that the Creator of the universe is going to come to earth and abide here. And simultaneously, He is going to allow us to go up and abide in His realm. And we are cohabiting both realms. We have Jacob's ladder. We have the staircase that Yaakov saw. The angels ascending to heaven from the earth, the angels descending from earth to the heavenlies. We are called to be able to host the royalty, the divinity, the majesty, the perfection, the beauty, the power, the energy of Kedusha, of the Creator of the universe. Oh my. Oh me. Oh wow. I can't just believe some good stuff. I can't just feel morally superior to others because I have some knowledge. I can't just have a nice little fellowship of people who believe like I do. I'm actually called to become the focal point, the host of the presence of the Holy One in every situation I face, in every relationship I have, in every location I go to. I am a key, a point man. I am a special forces. I'm a Delta Force here upon the earth to carry His majesty, His glory into every situation. Well, that's the magic words. That's the power words of the Torah. That's what we are actually having to deal with. So we need to learn to prepare to host his presence. Not on a few meetings where we hype ourselves up by some music or some powerful, emotionally charged preaching. Where it becomes normal, the new normal is for us to host the presence of the Holy One. You say, Bill, you talk this process, and I said, remember the continuum of Kedusha, the Kedusha continuum. We're going to do this imperfectly. We're going to do this incompletely. But we're going to keep pressing forward. We're going to keep being drawn higher into the higher levels where we do this more effectively. I'm not trying to put some standard, some bar so high you can't get to it. I made the mistake when I was in school of thinking I could do all kinds of things in all kinds of sports, and one of the things I thought I could do was high jump. If you know what high jump is, you run up and you jump over a bar. They've set a bar up, and you jump into a pit, a soft pit, and hopefully you will be competitive in this, and you'll be able to have you'll jump high levels, and the higher levels win the prize, the medals and all the fun stuff, the trophies. And so the thing about high jump is it all depends on where you set the bar as to how successful you feel. Now, I don't want to set the bar at 8 foot because I'm looking around you, and I believe some of you are pretty athletic, but I don't think any of you is going to make 8 foot. I don't think you're going to get close to an 8-foot bar. And that's what you may say. Well, Bill, you just said an 8-foot bar. You said I got to host the presence of the Holy One. I'm going to move the bar down a little bit. But I'm going to put it higher than you think you can jump. If I don't put it higher than you think you can jump in regard to the Kedusha, then you'll never push forward. You'll never work hard. You'll never keep moving forward. You'll never allow him to strengthen you and push a little harder and do a little more and get engaged deeper. And so the idea of the guy who sets the bar, and I became the guy who sets the bar. I couldn't jump 8 foot. I couldn't jump 6 foot. So I had to be the one who sets the bar. I did other events in track, but this is the one I would set the bar at whatever level. So whenever you have that first heat, your first bunch of people who are going to do this exercise, you probably set the bar high enough to kind of weed out the guys who just ain't going to do it, but not high enough to actually win the competition by any stretch of imagination. This first heat is just to see if you're in the ball game. But it's higher than most people think. When you first look at it, it looks really high that you're going to get up. That's what I'm trying to do to you. That's my job, my task, my assignment throughout the world, throughout this fellowship. My task is to set a bar higher than you think you can jump. More holy than you think you can be. But not so high that you can't do it. My job is to inspire you to push deeper, to push in, press in farther, to get more skilled at what you do, to stay focused on the fact that you're called to something greater than you're doing right now. And if I can only do that, if I can get you to at least think, I need to be doing better than I'm doing now at hosting the presence. I need to be doing better than I am now about introducing His holiness and His will and His ways into real life situations. I need to be less involved in my own flesh and my own attitudes, my own opinions, my own desires and urges and lust and greed and hunger. I need to be less involved with that. I hope I can make you feel that way. Not that I'm trying to punish you, not that I'm trying to make you feel bad or condemn you. I want to inspire you you're in this game, and the Creator of the universe is willing to make Himself available to you. Matter of fact, waiting, desirous. Who will invite me? You remember, whom shall I send? Who will go for us? Well, somebody had to raise their hand and say, look, I ain't there yet, but I'm willing to go. I'm a man of unclean lips. And everybody I know, every soul I know, that's just the problem. They got unclean. They got this other pull, this other draw, sucking them down. But I'm willing to go. And this is the level that we're trying to get to. What my job is in here. All right. So last week in the Michigan Discourse, we are in the book of Exodus, which I call the Building a Holy Nation Chronicles, the whole book. It's about building. Genesis, the first book of Torah, was about building a relationship with the Creator of the universe, a covenant relationship, building a powerful covenant relationship, one-on-one. This is an essential part before you get to the nation-building process. So we didn't get to Exodus, we get to the nation-building process till we had a firm foundation of covenant. I hope you all got your firm foundation of covenant with the Holy One. And you realize your calling is not different than Abraham's calling. You are to be a great people, a great nation. Make your name great. All the things we talked about. But this great nation building means you have to engage with other people. You can't be a lone ranger. You can't be a holy person over here that doesn't engage with the world. You are called to engage with the world and with other people and to not feel yourself superior to them. And if you're feeling superior to somebody else right now, whoever it may be, stop and take a deep breath. That's your primary problem. Not them and not their inferiority. It's your sense that you're superior. So, he said this issue, and now you're in the nation-building chronicles, the process of nation-building. It's a slow process. And in the process, he's done several things. He gave us the three-part calling, which was, again, the Am Segillah, the Mamlakat HaKohanim, and the Goy Kadosh, the holy nation, the kingdom of priests, the special treasure people, those things. And then he gave us the great theophany. He appeared to us and he spoke these 10 words, the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 transformative, DNA-changing words that put the bar of our lives, what seemed to be an incredible amount. This is when holiness pulls on you, you will not dishonor your parents. When holiness pulls on you and you respond to that holiness, you will not be adulterous. You will not take the name in vain. You will not have other images you put before the Holy One. You won't have your own opinions to be your gods. This is the holiness pull. That's what it looks like, the 10 words, the 10 descriptions of what your holiness Kedusha level is supposed to look like. He gave us that. And then he pulled us aside, he pulled Moshe aside and began to give him the Mishpatim discourse. He said, okay, now I want to renew your thinking. I want you to start thinking heaven down as opposed to earth up. I want you to start thinking from heaven down, from the kingdom's helicopter view down, rather than from the earth and its emotions and its physical insults and aggravations and wounds up. You know, the usual method of the world, of the Goyim, is pictured well by a commercial that came out a few years ago on television. And it's two kids in the back seat and mom in the front seat. And the little kid, the younger kid, is irritating the heck out of the older kid. And the older kid says to Mom, why did you have him? I don't like him. That's most of what the world, the Goyim, do. That's what most of us do when we're under the pull of the dark energy force of unholiness, unkedusha. That we don't like him. Why did you have him? Why did you put him in my earth? Why did you put him in my world? Why do I have to watch him on TV? Why do I have to see him in my grocery store? Why do I see him in the parking lot? Why do I have to deal with these people? Because we're so caught up in that low-key mindset. So he began to give us the Mishpatim discourse to learn to think from heaven down. Why did he put him here? He put him here for a reason. He put everybody you don't like here for a reason. And it isn't just for you. It's also for their development and for other people's development. And he's got a restorative, redemptive plan. Can you get over yourself and your emotions and your hurt feelings long enough to see things from the helicopter view down? The bigger picture of what the plan is. Well, that's the Mishpatim discourse, is what it was all about. Give you some pictures. Everything's got another story to it. Every got more to it than you think it does. And it'll offend your sensibilities if you're moral. If you think you're moral, you'll say, I don't like that. He said, I know. That's the point. You don't have the wherewithal to take the holiness energy in you to make something good out of bad stuff. Well, that's the Mishpatim discourse. And then last week, he took us to another realm altogether. He dunked us in the waters, again, of Revelation, and it's called the Teruma Protocol. How are you going to get yourself up here? You're all weighed down with all this garbage down here. You're all weighed down with all these emotions, all these opinions, all these attitudes, all these wounds and scars. You're all wounded all down here. How are you going to get up here? Well, that was the Tetzaveh protocol. Tetzaveh means to lift up, to raise you up, to get buoyancy, to get above the flow, to get above the darkness, above the dark pull. So he gave us the Tetzaveh protocol. And what he did primarily was say, look up here. If you want something to focus on, quit looking around you. Quit looking at all the bad politicians. Quit looking at all the government messes. Quit looking at all the sin and perversion and all the nonsense. It's there, I promise you. I'm not telling you it's not there. It's very, very real. And that's the only reason you're here is because it's very, very real. Now, if you understand that, you need to have a focus that is higher than that. If you don't have a focus higher than that, you just get caught up in it. It'll kill you. And it'll kill everybody around you because you'll get all poisoned and wounded and scarred by it. So look up here. Come up here. And so he begins to take Moshe on this wonderful tour, and us through Moshe, on this wonderful tour of his realm where he dwells. Because we're going to dwell with him, and he's going to dwell with us. We're going to have to find a medium where we can host his presence. And we got to know what his presence entails and what it involves. So last week he began to open those doors. He said, I just want you to start with a half shekel, man. You don't have to have anything whole. You're just a fragment of value. Nobody bring a bunch and tell me how spiritual you are by giving all more than somebody else. Everybody bring a half shekel of silver. It's simple. Bring it, and it's an investment. You're making an investment. I don't need the silver. I don't need your silver. You need to invest in the kingdom. You need to have a vision for something bigger. That's the only reason you're given the half shekel. And the reason it's a half shekel is because you got to understand somebody's got to come behind you and fill that up. You can't do this by a half shekel. Half is nothing. Half doesn't do anything. You need something to make you whole. I hope you heard that. You have to have something that will come behind you and make you whole. Well, Yeshua had this conversation with Kepha about that, with Peter about that, and about the fish, and where you're going to pay the money to pay the taxes, the temple tax. And it's a half shekel. What do? You go down and in the fish's mouth, you pull out the shekel, and it's a full shekel, and you will pay for me, he says, and for thee. You add the two together. Yeshua plus you makes a whole. Almost preaching a Christian fellowship. Yeshua plus you makes a whole. All right. So that was the Tetzaveh. He says, now look up here. Look around me. Look what's around me. Do you see what surrounds me? Do you see the holiness up here? Do you see the beauty? Do you see the majesty? Have you got a vision in your head of something more than this darkness and dreariness and ugliness that you see on earth all the time? Can you turn your eyes up and suddenly be inspired and encouraged? Well, I hope you can. So that was what last week was about. And he told us about this thing called the tabernacle, this place where we're supposed to build upon the earth with real physical stuff. We're going to get some silver and some gold and some copper, and we're going to get some fabric and some linen, and we're going to put our hands to work, and we're going to build some structure, and he's going to come. And here's a beautiful part. If we build it, then we'll have it. No, if we build it, he will come and fill it. If we build it, if we make this provision for it, if we make, Paul said, make no provision for the flesh. Well, if we make no provision for the flesh, but we make ample provision for the Spirit, then he will come and fill it. This is the idea of the tabernacle. Do we have a vision for him filling us? Do we have a vision for him filling our community? Do we have a vision for him filling us and being present with us? That was last week. This week. So if that happens, is that just a great spiritual high? Goosebumps? Make us feel all happy inside and run around the room, roll on the floor, whatever you do, raise your hands, fall on your knees. Is it just an experience? Or is it going to have some practical implications? Is it going to change your behavior? Is it going to change your focus? Is it going to change your reaction to other things that go around you? Is it going to change physically, emotionally, financially? Is it going to change everything about you? Well, yes, it is. And I call this this week, the beautiful people doing beautiful things. vision. Not believing beautiful things. We already are typically way past that. Beautiful people doing beautiful things. Who is that guy? Who are those men in the tabernacle? And what do they think they're doing in there? What is this avodah, this idea of their service? What is the level of their ministry, their service? And so the contagion of Kedusha operates. I told you about the Kedusha continuum, where we start with the nations and we go through Bnei Israel, then into the Leviim, the Levites, then into the priests, and then into the high priest, and then into the Holy One himself. I told you about that continuum. Now, I also told you a little bit about a draw or a pull or a magnetic force behind this level of the holy. If you focus on the holy, if you focus on that which is holy, it should draw you into its holiness. It's a force. It's energy. And you should be able to be caught. Now, here's the fact. Not only is it a force, it is a contagion. We live in a time of a lot of news about a virus that's contagious. A virus that you're talking about is not nearly as contagious as the holiness of God. The holiness of God is the most contagious thing in the world. The contagion of holiness. It's so holy. It's so real that if we get to this place where we have this altar that is built, if you touch the altar, no matter how messed up you are, no matter how unclean you had been, if you touch the altar, what happens to you? The contagion of holiness sets in, and it changes you, and you become holy. If you were a son of Aaron, and you put on the ephod, and you put on the tunic, and you put on the breastplate, and you put on the linen underpants, and you put on the hat, the turban, and you put on the little symbol that said, Kadosh Ladonai, holiness unto the Holy One. If you put on that garment, you would experience the contagion of holiness. You're not holy. Aaron's not holy. Nadab and Abihu weren't going to be holy. Ithamar and Eleazar are not going to be holy. None of those people are going to be holy, but they put on the garments. They put on the holy things. Why do you think he gave us the Sabbath every week? What is the Sabbath? It is the first thing the Bible says he made holy. So what is the holiness? What is the Sabbath supposed to do to you? It is to draw you into the holiness factor and give you the contagion, get you caught up. You have it in your body, in your mind, in your spirit. You become subject to the contagion of holiness. That's what Sabbath does for you. It's not a matter of you earning some rights or brownie points in heaven. It's what it does for you, in you. It begins to touch your DNA. So beautiful people doing beautiful things, a vision. The contagion of holiness begins to set in. If he can get us into a holy realm, if he can take us into his beauty realm, even in our mind, even in our spirit, if he can get us connected to his holiness, he knows that, I tell you, how's he going to do all this? How's he going to get us up to this? The contagion of holiness will do it. That's why, people say, I'm trying to be holy. Well, it's not going to work. You don't try to become holy. You have to get in touch with holy things, with the holy realm. And then holiness begins to impart itself into you. And it becomes where you can't be unholy, much as you might even at a given moment want to. It is like poison to your system, the idea that you would become unholy. Joseph knew this. Joseph said, whenever Potiphar's wife did her thing, far be it from me. How could I do such a thing? He had the holiness contagion. It wasn't that he was morally superior. It wasn't that he was somehow untouched by fleshly desires. Not a man. It was the fact that he had a contagion of holiness operative in him that was pushing against it, resisting it. This is what he wants to do with you. He wants to fill you with this contagion of holiness. All right. Well, I'll move on a little bit. starts with the beauty realm download. Our Parshat starts with the beauty realm download. And it begins to tell us that you too have a job to do. This is in the tabernacle, even if all you can do is play with it in your mind, even if all you do is think about it, then you too realize that something in that realm is supposed to touch you and bring holiness into your life. That's why I always say, never disregard the tabernacle. Never disregard any of the furnishings. Never say, oh, that's just for another time. It's all done away with. It's all gone. Because this is where the holiness resides. You don't have to go out and kill animals. That's not it. You don't have to build anything in your backyard. I am talking about letting your mind, your meditations, your emotions, your focus upon this holy thing and every element of it, and let the holiness of it draw itself into you. And so he's going to say to us, he says, now, Moshe's never mentioned by name in this Parshat. He's just the understood atah, the understood you. So he says, Tetzaveh, you call alongside Bnei Israel, all the people of Israel. Call them in, put on a yoke together. And we're all going to do something together. You have a job to do, and you need to do it together. Every man does it, but all together, it's part of a big national responsibility, community responsibility, because there's holiness attached to it. What is it we're supposed to do? What is Moshe supposed to tzav us, to instruct us to do, to get in the yoke of, to join with others to do? That you bring something. We're supposed to always be about the process of finding, collecting, and bringing something. Remember what it is? It's oil. But it's not oil for the sake of oil. It's not oil for the sake of running our cars. It's not oil for the sake of anointing ourselves. It's not oil for the sake of putting on our salads or cooking our vegetables. It's not oil for that purpose. Anybody remember? Salve all the people of Israel, all the men of Israel, that they bring you oil for the light, for the ore. Bring you oil for the oil. Don't just think about oil. Don't lose it with oil. It's oil for a particular purpose. Oil for every one of us has it. We're all engaged. Get your hands dirty. Get ready. Get active. Get engaged. Go. This is your job. This is your first aspect of touching the Kedusha continuum. Find oil for the light. The light. The ore. I hope it's hitting you somewhere in this process that you are the light of the world. That Yeshua is the light of the world. That in his reflection, becoming like him as we go along the continuum of Kedusha, remember, from the nations to Bnei Israel, to Levites, to Aaron's sons, to Aaron himself, the high priest, all the way up to what we find is we're going all the way up this process, and that's what we're aiming at the oil. We're setting the bar at the oil for the light. What does the light need? We're really talking about light. Oil is just a means to an end. What is the oil? Well, how do you get oil? How do you get the oil for the light? As in fact, he tells you. It is pure crushed. It is impurities removed from it by crushing. Zait zach. The oil that has been made pure by being crushed, removing the fleshy stuff. Removing the fleshy stuff out of the picture and letting it flow pure in a state of holiness, in a state of purity. So if you want to be going about your assigned task, if you're going to be a kingdom of priests, you're going to have to learn the process by getting the oil, finding the oil. That means that if you're not living at all times, particularly in an olive grove, and if you do, there's only a harvest once a year. And you probably don't have an olive press outside in your backyard, even if you did have an olive grove right in your backyard. We do happen to have a couple of olive trees out in the outside, but those aren't producing right now. It's not that season. So if you were to understand that your job is to somehow to find that which can be crushed, the flesh can be crushed and removed, then you have learned the secret of the oil. So what is it about your life that contains excess flesh that needs to be removed? Is it what makes you all emotional? What gets you all angry? What offends you? What causes you to retreat or sulk? Or what is it that causes you to get self-righteous or develop a sense of superiority or inferiority with regard to other people? What is it about what appetites do you not have under control? What urges, what drives have you not are active in your life? What greed, what fascination with material things is operative? What shiny, blingy stuff are you so fascinated with? What is it about your life that needs to be brought to the olive press? Where are you? Because that's whatever's ripe in your life that's what you have to press. Whatever's coming to the surface at this particular, that's what you got to bring to the press. That's what you got to crush and put down. And that means you're going to surrender it all to the Holy One. It means you're going to let your flesh be subjected to the will of God. Not my will, but yours be done. Seems like a familiar prayer to most of us. Now, if this is what we do, bring this to the olive press and we bring this oil, then whenever we present it along the stage of continuum of Kedusha, what we see is a true, pure image of light begins to take place in the world. We remove all of our flesh, all of our self-will, all of our self-promotion, all of our plans for what we can promote ourselves or make ourselves look better, feel better about life. If we remove all that stuff, what we find is this purity begins to come forth. The contagion of holiness begins to set in, and we actually begin to reflect, radiate pure light in the world, much as the menorah did in the tabernacle. Well, so this is our first job, and everybody has the job. Nobody's exempt. This is not, how are you doing on your oil? How are you doing on taking care of removing the flesh, of letting the purity come forth and drawing the contagion of holiness in? How are you at being a light in your house, in all your spheres of influence, in your neighborhood, in your workplace, in your marketplace, in your online presence, if you have one, in your conversations on the street? How are you at being a pure light, not a source of a lot of opinions, not an irritating, loudmouth, argumentative person, easily offended, easily wounded? How are we doing on becoming the light? Because this aspect of lightness, the incredible lightness of being, is a kind of a spiritual thing in the kingdom. You got to start with focusing on light. Okay, so that's the first aspect of it, and then we see that what Moshe wants us to do, what the Holy One wants Moshe to do, is to set apart Aaron and his sons for something called kahaning, to kahan. I think our English Bibles usually say minister, so they may minister to me. Set aside your brother Aaron. Now, all this time, I presume most of us have been like me for years. I had this image that the only reason Aaron was called was because he was Moshe's brother. And now we find out the truth. The only reason Moshe was called was because he was Aaron's brother. And that's the most of the truth about life in general, folks. You're sitting there saying, why did you call them? And they said, because you need to understand that, that he's the one I called first, and you're just attached to his life and involved in his life. We get over our pride, we get over our arrogance, we get over our sense of superiority in these realms whenever we realize. I think Aaron was called, and Moshe was happened to his brother, so he got called in this process too, and they called him to set aside and advance Aaron. Now, can we say it? I mean, I'd love to tell you, I wouldn't like to lie to you, that Aaron was perfect. Aaron was everything that the sages say he was. He was always trying to help and heal everybody, and everything he did was a good motive. I believe Aaron was a human being. I think that was the whole point. So are you. So am I. So will everybody else so will every minister you ever knew. So will every preacher. So will every other person in any fellowship you're part of. So is everybody, folks. We're all flawed, failing human beings. So it isn't because Aaron was holy that he was called to be high priest. It was because he wasn't holy. But he was interested. And he was willing. And he could be redeemed by the touch of the Creator's hand. And he could be subjected and energized by the Kedusha force, the contagion of Kedusha. If he just got if he just got into it, if you just get into it, he could get absorbed in the contagion of it. This is why I know people in the nations, people that are not in a relationship with God, they don't understand. They think somehow you got to really work really hard and be really holy as you make it in your own way, and they don't want that. They don't even want to try, much less do they think they could possibly do it. Much less do they think you're doing it. And they think you're a joke. They think you're a hypocrite. Don't be offended. They're right. In your own flesh, in your own abilities, they're right. You're always right. So don't get offended by it. Don't get all upset in yourself. Okay, so this is the idea with Aaron as well. Aaron was also human and failing and also hypocritical and all these sorts of things. He had some, but whenever he touched the holy, he could begin to absorb the holiness and get the contagion of it and begin to flow in it. That's why he was given these special garments. You see about the garments that he was put on him. He wasn't even holier than he was before he put but the garments began to make him holy. And what he did became holy because of what his garments did. The garments were the actual picture. So it is with us. Now, you know, think about, when have we heard this story about special garments? Before. Is this all new? Let's go back to Genesis chapter 3. What happened in Genesis chapter 3 toward the end of the chapter? After the fall, after the whole serpent thing and the process took place, and the Holy One did something very unique. It tells you it did it. He did it in chapter 3. He said he made them garments. And in English it reads garments of skin. But in Hebrew it says garments of or, light. He made Adam and Hava, before he sent them out of the world, he gave them garments of light. When the book of Revelation talks about a lamb slain before the foundation of the world, we realize that he's talking about Yeshua, he's talking about the Messiah. And therefore the light, what is the light that he put on Adam and Hava? These special garments were garments. That didn't mean Adam and Hava were perfect. It means that they were carrying this garment of light. And so are we in Messiah. We are carrying this garment of light. And the energy and the Kedusha of that garment is what pulls us, not our own righteousness, not our own obedience even. Not any of those things. It is how we respond to the draw of the Kedusha, the draw of the holiness. What else? Where else have we seen this special garment thing? It's funny because I'll kind of skip over the Yaakov and Esav thing and the garments of Esav, the special garments that he put on, that Yaakov put on. And there was a strange word, of course, according to the legend, the Midrash, the garment they put on him was the garment that Adam and Hava wore in the garden. I don't know if that's really happened or not, but that's the sense. And then he said, Yitzhak says, whenever he comes close, the smell, the fragrance, the aroma of my son. The aroma of my son. It is like a field that the Holy One is blessed. Now, this is a special garment that he wears. Now, I hope you'll see this in the priestly garments. What aroma does he want those garments to have? He wants to play Yitzhak to this drama. He wants that aroma to be the aroma of his son, of a natural thing in the earth that has been blessed, of a flesh substance, a person who has been brought in the fullness of the holiness, Kedusha, contagion, and been blessed by it. This is the process. Well, one more historical event. involving a special garment. Who had a special garment among the patriarchs? Joseph, right? Yaakov knows something about these special garments. He makes a special garment for his son Joseph. And this, you call it coat of many colors, or, the long, ornate coat, the coat of his authority. He wasn't the oldest. He wasn't the firstborn, not of the whole family at least. And so when he put on this garment, it projected the holiness and the person of who he was. It told the world that he's this chosen vessel. He is a unique one among all others. Well, this is what the garments of Aharon and his sons are going to do. It's this whole process of holy garment. What are your garments like? What are you wearing? That's one thing about the physical things you wear. I'm not going to get into your dress habits or your closet. I'm not going to do that, but I do want to encourage you to think about the fact that there should be a level of kingdom kedusha about every stitch of clothing you put on, because it is going, especially if it's seen by the rest of the world, if it's seen by your family members, if it's seen by your workplace associates. If you're going to be seen, then you need to carry some level of kedusha. I'll let you decide that for yourself as to what level of kedusha is appropriate for you. But you are no longer your own. Your tastes do not matter. How you reflect yourself into the world, how the light of the Holy One shines through you is what matters. Now, this is, I know, totally anathema to the culture that we live in, because this culture we live in is drawn by the dark forces, drawn by the unholiness, the way of the sinner, the seed of the scornful, the self-image, the self-will, I get to decide what I want to wear, how I want to wear my hair, how I want to wear my beard if I have one, how I want to do. I get to choose this stuff. You don't get to tell me that. I get to do it. I want to do it according to this. That's the opposite. When the kedusha realm hits you, it's not that we judge other people. You shouldn't judge other people. It is that you yourself should present the best possible you, and that includes your garments. But let's go beyond the physical garments that you wear. Those are important because that's what people see. When you walk in, is there a holy, like a garment upon you that just throws something in the room? I mean, have you ever been around somebody that when they walked in the room, the atmosphere just somehow got better or worse? Immediately you saw them walk in a room, I know more people are like this, and it's like, oh, they're here. Oh, no. This is not going to be pretty. Can I make a peaceful exit? Can I just leave? How do I deal with that? Maybe it's a relative of yours. Maybe you're the relative. But you walk in the room, and it's like everybody's, the air goes out of the room. The oxygen gets sucked out. It's like, everybody gets tense. Or consider the opposite. That people of the kingdom are called to, when they enter the room, there's a fresh air. There's a fresh, not a cologne, not a perfume, not eau de toilette. I'm talking about there's a sense of kingdom. The smell of my son. Oh, the smell of my son. Paul talked about it. He said the fragrance of Messiah, the scent of Messiah, the aroma of Messiah. That is what we're calling it. And can you carry it? Do you carry it? How do you get it? How do you get it? You have to immerse yourselves in the things of Messiah. You have to, they said of the disciples of Yeshua, they took note in the Acts. They took note that they had been with Yeshua. How did they take note? They just remembered they saw him with him? No, because he rubbed off on them. His way of talking, his way of interacting, his way of engaging people, his way of looking at you, his way of carrying himself had rubbed off on them. And you're never going to be the same again if you let it. That's the contagion of holiness. That's why believing in Yeshua and serving in his kingdom are two very different things. Serving in his kingdom means that you have surrendered to that Kedusha energy of who he is, and his Kedusha is actually what's drawing you and pulling you, compelling you forward. You're compelled to love. You're compelled to forgive. You're compelled to serve. You're compelled to give mercy. And if you're not being compelled, it is a inexorable, with no exception, spiritual reality. If you are not feeling compelled to forgive, feeling compelled to give mercy, to show mercy, to speak life and health and peace to people, if you're not being compelled to do that by this energy, power pulsing in you from your present being engaged with the holy things of God and the Messiah who is the holiest of all, that's what the book of Hebrews calls him, the holiest of all. If you're not doing that, being compelled by this, it's only one reason. Slap myself because I'm in this following with you. All human beings have this one failing. Even when you come in the kingdom, whenever we don't surround ourselves with the beauty realm, when we don't surround ourselves with the holy things, when we don't stay in contact, close communion with the Holy One and with Yeshua as Messiah, when we don't do that, then we quit being compelled. And then we think it's all us. We're doing it. Well, I like to be angry, but I will, in my own power, my own willpower, I'll choose to be the bigger person here. If you ever say you're the bigger person, you ain't. If you ever say, I'm going to be the bigger person, please understand this. You ain't ever going to be the bigger person. You're the lower person because you're thinking such nonsense that you could be the bigger person. So, now I've let the cat out of the bag. Because I told you we begin this whole process, this whole thing today, that the creator of the universe's plan is to indwell us, is to be where we are, be with us, and for us to be with him. Yeshua called it abiding. I will abide in you, you will abide in me. I in you, you in me. This is the plan. Why? So that his energy of Kedusha can leak into us, can work in us, can remove the flesh from us little bit by little bit, bring forth pure oil from us little bit by little bit, situation by situation, and begin to actually reveal what his kingdom looks like in real time, in real ways, in real situations, in real struggles, in real problems, in the midst of real arguments and real messes on human soil, down here on earthly soil, and let it shine, and let it shine, and let it shine. Now, this is a big thing the Holy One's trying to do to us. To get you out of religion, because religion tells you, I'm going to make myself better. It's like a self-help book. This is just the religious section of the self-help library. I can make myself better. He says, the only way you can make yourself better is to come into my presence. Abide in my presence with me. Start as little as you can. Start somewhere. Start on the Sabbath. That's the basic element, the basic unit of Kingdom Kedusha is the Sabbath. Start with the Sabbath somewhere. And we're going to build out from there. That's why he gives us all these Moedim. He gives us the 7 great Moedim festivals that he puts in to get a little deeper. 7 days of unleavened bread. Wow, we're going from 1 day of Sabbath to 7 days of another level of holiness. And this is just elementary levels. Moedim are just elementary levels of getting close to the holiness. And later on, we learn day by day, evening and morning. This is the daily Tamid, the thing we're going to see. What happens every evening and every morning, there's an avodah, there's a service that takes place in the holy realm. It's not just in the tabernacle and the minds. It also should be a part of our life. Every evening, every morning, we should touch Kedusha. How do you do that? Well, in the tabernacle, it was done through the menorah. Aaron had to go in and trim the lamps of the menorah and make sure the lamps were full with oil. And it was done at the altar of incense, the golden altar of incense. And incense had to be lit, and the pleasing, fragrant aroma had to arise, and the smoke cloud had to fill the temple. And as we get closer and closer to the presence of the Holy One, more of the scent, more of the fragrance had to be there. And then the third thing was that in the outer court, where everybody came, where everybody was welcome, in the brazen altar, actually a copper altar, but we'll just use brazen because that's what people know. At this altar out there, on behalf of the entire nation, evening and morning, that was what was provided was what's called in English a lamb. The Hebrew word means one who is under control or is controlled. It's the same word used in the Genesis 1 story when it says that you will take dominion. You know, the man's job on earth, man's task is to be the shadow of the Holy One, to be his, move when he moves, go where he goes. And you will then take dominion. You will take this, and the same word is used of this, we translate it as lamb. What it means is you'll take everything that's not subjected to the dominion of the Holy One, and you'll bring it into dominion. This is what the ninth of the fruit of the Spirit. What is the ninth jewel in the crown? Self-control. Actually, it's self-denial would be the better way of translating that. Self-effacement, self-will, submission. And that is what this evening and morning does. Are we setting apart time in our lives twice a day, evening and morning, to actually surrender our will to the Holy One? Now, if you get this picture, you'll understand why Shaul said, don't let the sun go down on your anger. Because anger is your warning light of your spirit saying, something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong. Not with other people, with me. If I'm angry, if I'm offended, if I'm unforgiving, if I am fearful, if I'm afraid, if I'm anxious, if I'm lustful, if I'm greedy, if I'm lazy, if this is happening is, don't let the sun go down on it, because you understand right before sundown what we're supposed to do. Right before sundown, you were supposed to submit, go under dominion, everything in your life, and give it back to the Holy One. Let him take control. Let the Kedusha of his holy altar infect you. Okay, well, now you understand. Hopefully, we're getting a picture that the calling of the Creator of the universe is being revealed, is being laid out for you. Precept by precept, some would say, or line by line. It's actually image by image, picture by picture. He is finding this way to attach it to us, this way to attach it to us, but his goal is to find ways he can put his holiness energy work into you. Are you ready? Are you anxious to do this? This is the call of Parshat Tetsave. There's a reason he's doing it with such passion right now. If you knew what was coming next, and most of you who read the Torah do, but if you don't, I'll tell you. What's coming next? The golden calf is coming next. A catastrophe of violent vigilante murder is going to take place in our camp. Blood, mangled bodies, heaping waste of humanity that came with us out through the waters of the Red Sea, came with us in holiness and nevertheless fell. Catastrophe is about to hit the camp. The golden calf is about to draw this energy back from the dark realm and suck all the holiness energy out of us. And then we're going to have this season called, I call it Ish, from the Hebrew, Ish Patok Aholo. Every man's going to be shocked and go run to the entrance of their own tent. We're going to become hermits. We're going to become Lone Rangers for a time being. We're going to become preppers, and we're going to become all self-contained and jealous and suspicious of other people, even in our own camp. This is going to happen to us. He knows it's going to happen to us. I got to put as much holiness into you in the beginning as I can, because he knows what's coming. He always sends the cure before he sends the disease, before he allows the disease to hit us. Well, this is why we need the Kedusha. You need the Kedusha energy of the Holy One. You need to contact with the holy things. You need to focus your mind and your heart and your spirit on the holy things of the tabernacle and beyond, and of Yeshua, and of the presence of the Father, who he represents, the spiritual essence of who he is. You need this focus and this energy flowing into you because of the stuff that's coming your way, and the stuff that people around you are going to be doing. Because if you don't have it, you are not prepared. You will not survive. You will not fare well at all. You will fall with Babylon. You will get all caught up in the political, social, economic mess and blaming whoever you want to blame for it. You'll be offended. You'll be, blessed is he who is not offended in the Holy One. In Yeshua, he said, blessed is the one who's not offended in me. Now, this key factor is, how do we avoid falling into the traps of the rest of the world? How do we avoid the beast kingdom taking control of our lives? How do we avoid the failing to be fruitful in the time of the tribulation? How do we avoid these things? Because it's all coming. The Holy One knows it's coming. You should know it's coming. How do we avoid these things? It's not by hiding away in study halls. It's by immersing yourselves in the things that the Holy One calls holy. Re-establishing, reconnecting, getting closer in your relationship to Yeshua than you've ever been. And if you do so, then you will find that the things that happen in the world around you just don't have the same impact on you they used to. You can listen to them blabbing and blabbing and blabbing and yelling and yelling and yelling and blaming and blaming and blaming on the television set or on the internet news. And it just like, you just shake your head, say, okay. You say, now what I got to do? I got to do what I got to do. I leave that alone because that's a distraction. That's all that is. I can't have any impact on it. I can't help it, so let me do what I can help. Let me find what I can help and deal with that issue. And you'll learn how to be joyful. This is the ultimate level of Kedusha. Yeshua talked about it. He says, blessed is he when men, especially you, when men revile you and say all manner of false things against you for my sake. Blessed are those who are persecuted for my sake. Blessed are you. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad. Why? How can you do that? Say, how can I do that when they're doing that to me and my family and all that, all the bad people? And all these bad things are happening. How can I rejoice? How can I be joyful? How can I radiate joy and easy. You begin to think about the holy things and the plan of God and the fruit that he's bringing forth and the helicopter view of what's really happening in this world. The season we just came through, which is Purim, is supposed to be a wake-up call. About the time you think it can't get any worse, it gets worse. But about the time you're positive it can't get any worse, somehow something happens. This is the God we serve. This is the kingdom we're in part of. And somehow, though all manner of evil was planned against us, though all manner of evil was done amongst us, though we weren't perfect, though we didn't even acknowledge who we were and what we were doing and why we were here, because of the covenant the Holy One made with Abraham, because the plan he developed before the foundation of the world for redemption and for restoration, somehow, from the helicopter view, when you look beyond the present circumstances, you begin to see it. The Holy One's will be done. Redemption will come. If we don't want to participate, that's our business. It's going to come through another source. Esther. Hadassah, wake up. You're not Esther. You're not some similarity to some other culture looking like them. You're a Hadassah. You were born to be the messenger of the light of the kingdom. Well, that's the message we're in. That's the time we're living. I call you, all those who are with me from the internet, those viewing from different locations and nations and continents across the world. Let us know you've been here. We thank you for joining us. Thank you for letting us come into your home. I pray that something that was been spoken from heaven has come through my mouth into your heart, into your life, into your home. But let us know what's going on with you. Ask for prayer if you need prayer. Give us a comment if you have a comment, an inspiration, encouragement, or whatever you want to say. Thank you for being with us. For all of my friends here, stick around. We're going to be back in just a few minutes.